If you watch my last video about the Rule Zero discussion, it alludes to a much wider topic of the social contract. What even is the social contract and how do you participate in it? Hey everybody, Jason Comm here, and today we're talking about Kommander's social contract. Now, I believe that Kommander has two parts. Part A are the cards and interactions your deck brings to the table, and Part B is the social aspect of the game where deals are made and alliances are forged. While not explicitly named, the social contract affects both aspects of Kommander. The social contract is a subjective term meaning different things to different playgroups, but I'll do my best to define what it means to me now. Bring the cards, interactions, playstyle, and attitude to the table that you would want to sit across from, or simply treat others how you would like to be treated. The purpose of the social contract is to create an environment where every player has the opportunity to have an enjoyable game. Rule Zero is a great discussion to have to determine what the social contract of that game or playgroup is going to be, and I recommend you have that discussion each time you play with a new group of players. So what does it mean for each player to have the opportunity to have an enjoyable game? Well, for me in my playgroup, it's fairly simple. Define your terms during Rule Zero. Let's start with the cards we bring to the table. Although there are some exceptions, Kommander is a pay-to-win game, meaning that if you do not have a budget and you've built a deck full of fetch lands, fast mana rocks, and high-powered staples, you are going to win most, if not all, the games you play against a bunch of precons. So if you plan on playing the same group of people, keep in mind that you may be able to afford the Rhystic Studies, the Demonic Tutors, and Mana Crypts of the world, but your buddies may not. So build your decks accordingly. Now, I have a couple of different play groups, and I have higher powered decks I like to play with one group, and precon level decks I like to play with the other. I have just as much fun playing with high powered decks as I do the precon level decks because the expectation set at each of those tables is defined, and each of us operates within that structure. Now, price isn't the only thing we need to consider when choosing the cards we put in our decks, but also the effects our cards will have on the table. If you've ever played against an unannounced Stasis, Vorinclex, or Mindslaver, you'll know what I'm talking about. Although these cards are extremely powerful and they often contribute to a negative environment by not allowing people to play Magic. So keep in mind the social contract differs by playgroup, so yours may not have a problem with these cards, but I'm using them as an example to show that if you bring the cards to the table that prevent others from being able to play the game, you need to be upfront about it during Rule Zero and give people a chance to walk away from that game and find a pod they'll enjoy. I promise you there are tons of people out there that love playing these cards and they probably can't wait to play with you. Now, this leads us to the interactions our decks are capable of, and I believe this is one of the biggest sources of contention when playing with new groups. Define your terms during Rule Zero. Again, are infinite combos on the table? If so, to what degree? Are two-card combos okay? Is stacks okay? Are we playing with mass land destruction? These are all great questions to ask during Rule Zero. Now, when I first started playing Kommander, I never anticipated or participated in a Rule Zero discussion and was oblivious to any sort of social contract. I had built an Animar deck with the card Ancestral Statue in it, and I was playing with a new group of guys I had met at the game store. Everyone was playing power level 4 to 6 decks that night, and I was so excited to play my new Animar deck. I got to position in the game where I had Impact Trimmers in play, alongside Animar with 5 counters on it. I drew Ancestral Statue and was so freaking excited. I slammed it down, demonstrated the combo with Impact Tremors. No one had any responses, and I won the game. But when I looked around the table, no one was cheering me on. No one congratulated me on that game. They had a confused and annoyed expression on their face, and one guy actually said, "So you're that guy." I was completely taken aback. I thought winning the game was the whole point, and I thought this combo was really cool, and when it went off, I was excited. I didn't realize that this group I was playing with had a social contract. I was just unaware. Now, I alone am not fully responsible to blame for this, but whenever we all sat down, I believe everyone just assumed that we were all on the same page, but no words were spoken. Their expectations had already been set, and I inadvertently violated those expectations. I learned a valuable lesson that night. My fun contributed to some other people's unhappiness at the table. The cards and interactions I chose to play with were not cool, so I apologized. They could see that this was an honest mishap, and after that game we talked about the types of decks we play and the interactions they don't like to see at the table. After that talk, I played with that group a few more times and had an absolute blast. The moral of that story is to have that Rule Zero discussion first, set expectations, and define what the social contract is. And I promise that you have a more enjoyable experience playing Kommander with new groups. Now, another area we need to consider when defining what the social contract is at our tables is playstyle. There are certain deck building archetypes that can lead to frustration at the table, such as Storm, Mill, Theft, Stacks, and Voltron. Storm decks can often have lengthy turns where they spin their wheels for 10 plus minutes, building the storm count and looking for a finisher. A lot of new players and precons don't slot graveyard recursion into their decks, so Mill can be heartbreaking to see your favorite cards end up in the bin rather than in your hand. Having your favorite commander or permanent taken away from you and used against you can feel bad and make you not even want to play. And stack decks make the game drag on at a snail's pace, and Voltron style decks can really frustrate people that don't like playing with commander damage. If you have any decks like this, be sure to bring up how the deck plays out in the Rule Zero discussion. Something like, hey guys, I brought my Mizzet deck. It's a storm deck. Sometimes the turns can take a little while just to build the storm count. Is that cool? By being upfront about what your opponents can expect from you and the deck you're bringing to the table, you can get feedback before the game even starts to consider whether or not you'll play it. Now, the last thing I'd like to talk about is attitude. Remember, treat others the way you'd like to be treated. Some of the best advice I can give you to contribute to a positive playgroup and commander session is to be a cheerleader at the table. When someone does something cool, cheer them on. Let them know how sweet that play was. When someone wins the game in a creative and awesome way, give them a high five or fist bump and make sure that you let that player know that you value their fun. Commander is a social game. Having respect for each other is extremely important, but what keeps playgroups together and thriving is showing each other that you value their fun. If you keep one thing from this video, let it be that. Value each other's fun. Now keep in mind, the social contract is not a club that you can use to make sure no one ever plays something you don't like. It's more like guidelines and being upfront about what you're bringing to the table, defining expectations, and creating a space where everyone has the opportunity to have fun. That's the social contract video. We defined what the social contract is, a few different ways to navigate it, and how to foster a positive and healthy playgroup. In the next video, we're going to take a deeper look into some of the most popular playstyles in Commander and see which one interests you. Until then, this is the Commander, signing off.